Good evening, everyone. It's time for another hour. Well, let's go less than an hour with the Hillbilly Think Tank. I am Spencer Keck. I'm running for Magistrate, District 3, Hardin County, Kentucky. And I am a veteran, a teacher, a dad, a father, that is, a husband, also a dog dad. Got four dogs. Just to let you know who I am. Now, as I think about my life and all the years that I served in the military, I never thought that I would hear someone that's at the top of the military tell us that we needed to return to the days of the 1990s when the military was plagued with hazing rituals gone awry, from the tailgate in the Navy, where aviators had women run a gauntlet in a hotel as they harassed, hazed, sexually harassed them, sexually assaulted them. I was an affront to the whole Navy. Gave us a black eye. Move on down the line. We had eradicated abuse in boot camp. We made sure that boot camp was tough, hard, and challenged young men and women. But laying hands on young men and women and beating them, we abolished that. When women started taking on combatant roles, well, the military had already started preparing for this because we had put in strict sexual harassment rules after tailgate. Tailhook, sorry. Tailhook was the name of the scandal in the 90s with the aviators. And that started us down the path of correcting our ethos of how men and women behave together in the military. You know, we've come a long way, but after Secretary Kegsbreath gave his speech to all the generals and the leaders, enlisted leaders of the military the other day, it became obvious we're heading back to the days of hazing, of corporal punishment, of beating people into submission. We're not valuing men and women for their brains anymore. We're going back to the days where we believe that enlisted people are not intellectually sound enough to be trained without treating them like slaves, putting their hands on them. You know, in my over 20 years of military experience from 1990 to 2014, I learned there were two types of leaders: those who led by intimidation because they didn't really know how to inspire people to follow them unless it was by brute force. And I learned that there were leaders who I would follow over a cliff if they told me to jump over the cliff, because I knew that they were going to be the ones leading that jump off a cliff. And what does these leaders do to inspire me? They led from the front. They were servant leaders. They made sure that everyone that followed them had what they needed to succeed, whether it was the right equipment, the right training, the right time to train, the right, definitely supplies, equipment, training, but also that they themselves knew what they were doing, and they always stayed on the top of their game. These leaders, yes, they also did inspire me because their fitness was always above par. And if I knew if they were having the men drop and give 10, 20, 50 push ups, they were doing it right alongside them. But that's not what slapping and beating and hazing entails. That always entails the leader not doing the same thing or receiving the same type of punishment that they're meting out, not the same type of hazing that they're meting out. And so I'm just appalled by this idea that we have lost our warrior ethos because we can't lay hands on people anymore. No, the people that laid hands on people were the ones that I never trusted in combat. Never. Were the ones that inspired me because they were the smartest, they were the most capable when it came to all the jobs that they led. Those are ones I, well, like I said, I would jump over a cliff if they said to jump because I knew they'd be there first. Now I can go on and on about that, but there's also other things that I noticed about Kegsbreath's speech to all these leaders. Number one, he's looking for ways to kick out more minorities. How's he going to do that? This whole shaving policy that he thought he needed to tell all the generals about instead of sending it to them in a memo like all shaving policies have been in the past. All right. So, for those that aren't African American or don't have any African American friends, maybe you don't know that when African American men shave, close shave, as is required for most people in the military, a close shave causes the hairs of African American men, or and also some Caucasian men, I've seen this happen to them too, causes the hair to curl back into the skin, and that causes pus pockets. We call this pseudo folliculitis Barbie. These pus pockets will be all over every pore that they grow back into. And when they are shaved repeatedly, this causes keloids. That's another medical malady that African Americans often get when they get scar tissue. This is hyperactive scarring. So, what would be a small scar for someone else will be an enormous growth of scar tissue. This is a horrible situation to put someone through just to make them shave. But I've seen it over and over in the military. Now, as a Navy primary care provider, I ran the pseudofolliculitis Barbie shaving program for many commands that I was part of. And these programs in the Navy differ from the program that the Marine Corps ran, which was stricter. But in the Navy, we had a protocol for pseudofolliculitis Barbie. And this protocol would make way for African Americans to shave in a modified manner. I won't go into all the details of it, but let's just say that if someone got to the final stages of the pseudofolliculitis Barbie protocol, they would be given a shaving waiver. Now, this did not mean they could grow a full, long beard. It just meant that their beard could grow to within, I believe it was a quarter of an inch, um, possibly half inch. And then they would just have to use trimmers instead of shaving it with a razor. They have to keep it trimmed, but they could grow a short beard, never a long beard. And they could not shave lightning bolts or anything into it, like I saw tried once or twice. And that immediately, whenever someone would try something like that, I would take their senior enlisted, um, and we would go into my medical treatment area and chastise this person, letting them know, hey, you are violating the rules of the shaving waiver, and you're going to make it harder on anyone else that is African American that needs a shaving waiver, because they're going to think that this is just an excuse to be out of regulations. So I made sure that I ran a tight protocol as the Navy prescribed. But I also knew that there were many folks who did not like this PFB protocol, and that I had to make sure that all the sailors followed it to the T, followed this order, Navy order, to the T. I also knew that there could be a racist commanding officer that could decide he didn't want to give someone that shaving waiver. And the way it was written, if a commanding officer wanted to kick someone out over them not shaving with a razor, he could. Or he could make a decision that they would get a permanent modified shaving waiver. And that modified shaving waiver was allowing African American or any male with pseudofolliculitis barbae, because I've seen white folks get it too. They could allow these sailors from there on out in their career to have a modified shaving that would allow them to use only clippers on their face and not a straight razor or not any type of razor that would give them a close shave. And they could go on ahead and do a full 20 years, and this didn't affect their service in any manner at all. Right? I took orders from people with this modified shaving waiver, and it never bothered me a bit to have someone standing in front of me with a little bit of hair growth, and it didn't bother me to receive an order from them. It didn't make me think that they were less of a sailor or less of a warrior. But I always knew that if a CO was racist, the way that rule was written, he could kick them out of the military, kick them out of the Navy. Now, luckily, I never saw that happen. But I did see many officers, African American officers, tear their face up, put keloid scars all over their face, neck, just to make sure that no one could ever talk crap about them, that they'd always had a close shave. And to me, this was a travesty. Now, I know it's a long explanation, but people that have not served in the military and heard Keg's breath going off about beards the other day, this was his dog whistle to any commanding officer in the military that wants to kick out their African American sailors, Marines, airmen, soldiers if they ask for a shaving waiver and legitimately ask for it for medical purposes. Now, the only other people that I've saw get waivers as I was retiring in 2014 was the Army was starting to allow some soldiers of the Sikh faith, which is a faith from India, and these soldiers were being allowed to wear the Sikh headdress or turban, which is different from the Muslim turban, not to be confused, because there's two different faiths. But they were also allowed to have beards in the Army. I didn't have anything to do with that, though, because I took care of Navy and Marine Corps personnel, and their beard waiver was purely religious, whereas the waivers that I helped sailors and Marines come encounter with was purely medical reasons. That being said, there was a lot of other things that just appalled me about Keg's breath speech. I won't even mention um, POTUS's speech. uh, just how flabbergasted I was for number one that POTUS decided to let the Russians know that we have two submarines off their coast with nuclear missiles. That is giving away top secret information to the enemy for the whole world to hear. But be that as may, other things in his speech just appall me, but I'm not even going to go there. But I am going to go to the fact that we know that Keg's breath does not like having a diverse military. And he will use any excuse he can to shut down our history of diversity in the military, our history of African American soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, Coast Guardsmen performing just as well or often better than Caucasian persuasion military men and women, right? And now that this is going to give plenty of leaders an excuse to kick out minorities. That's appalling. I have, in combat, I've been saved by African American sailors, Marines, and in non-combat time, I've also been saved by African American sailor. One in particular is a good friend of mine to this day. Um, yeah, so it just amazes me that we're at this point now. I've had leaders of all different races. It never bothered to me what anyone's race was. All that ever mattered to me was, were they competent? And 99.9% of the time, all of my leaders were competent. There were the slim couple times in my career when I've served under incompetent leaders, uncaring leaders, but it had nothing to do with their race at all. Never has, never will. So please, America, please, let's ask for and demand a stop to this war against minorities in our military, this war against minorities anywhere in our government and leadership. Let's recognize that what makes you great is not your race. Nothing to do with that. What makes you great is your character, your spirit, your sense of duty through empathy to your fellow men and women. The leaders that I follow know that they are their brother's keeper, that they are their sister's keeper. And I follow those leaders anywhere. All right, y'all. I could ramble on and on about this. It's really stuck in my craw. Have a great night. Let's all have a great night. Love one another. Treat each other with love and care. Remember, we are our brother's keeper, our sister's keeper. Vote for me for magistrate, Hardin County. Check out.